Okay, so the last presentation before lunch is Alan Stanley, and Alan Stanley, most of you know, is the Director of Environmental Services for the Regional District of Kootenay Boundary. Alan's going to give you an overview on the changing and plans and discussion on milfoil. And so I know everybody here is passionate about this subject, so that's why we're going to do an overview. Alan's going to do an overview, and then after lunch we'll have open forum talking about the health of Christina Lake, including the Eurasian Milfoil. Okay? Alan Stanley. It's got one of those weird computers. Yeah. It's the Apple Man.
So I look, I've got 20 minutes on the, according to the agenda, and I'm not sure that we've ever actually had a 20-minute conversation on milfoil in the history of the problem. So we'll see if we can do it. See how it works. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Looks like we're good to go. So what we'll do right off the bat, I'm going to just address some of the issues that you all know about if you've been around the lake. We've had a couple of. I've been here for. This is I guess my third milfoil season. I've been working on this program, just administering it from the office and trail, and. Unfortunately, as you all know, one of the longtime supervisor of the program tragically passed away at a very young age. He was well loved by everybody. That threw our program into a bit of a tailspin. New supervisor picked up the pieces, and he unfortunately left us this summer. And so I'm going to introduce Mr. Andy Gilmore. Stand up, Andy. And you don't know Andy. Andy had. I'm really happy and impressed with Andy's ability to step up during a very trying period of time through the summertime when we did lose when our supervisor left the program. So, thanks, Andy. So let's see if I think my battery's dead, so I'll have to do this manually. That's okay. Maybe I will. There we go. Okay, so I'll just start off with just a general overview. And unfortunately, we don't have the 2011 plant counts plotted on the map yet, but this is just bigger dots mean more plants, smaller dots mean less plants. And I'm showing this particular diagram of the lake for a reason, because what we've done on this diagram is wherever you can see this green cross-hatching, you can see it at the top of the lake. This is obviously South Bay right here. Up to the top, you can see the green cross-hatching start. That's actually provincial parkland. And again, that just gives you a general overview of where the plant concentrations are throughout the thing. And then when you get up into the upper end of the lake, you'll see virtually the whole upper half of the lake is provincial parkland. So in 2011, we had a process where we had approached the Ministry of Environment for some assistance. And again, we thought that this was, since over half the lake is a provincial park, we refuse to be convinced that it's not reasonable to ask for some assistance to work on this from the provincial government. This is a letter we received. Now, this letter was from Minister Terry Lake, Minister of Environment, as a result of a proposal that we put in. Now, I don't want to be too critical, but
I do.
The quote that's highlighted there, and I, if you can't read it, I'll read it out to you. Milfoil has not been found to have a significant impact on fish or aquatic biodiversity. So that's what we know now. So that's it in my presentation. We're good. So bye. So that said, though, Director McGregor again, at the UBCM conference in September, again, we spoke to the minister. And one of the points that we were trying to make is that this lake is like a big mill in a small mill town. It is the economic engine. If the mill goes down, the town goes down. But we're not getting anywhere, and with that, so we'll just carry on. So now let's talk a little bit about the program as related to previous years. So this graph goes back to 1992. This first line shows. So this graph compares funding to production. So the first line shows the provincial funding of the program. It started off primarily funded by the province. The second green line shows the RDKB tax requisition from 1992 to 2011. You can see that line has gone up, but not in any kind of really drastic fashion. It's crept up, and you could probably say that probably hasn't even kept pace with cost of living or inflation. It's at $150,000 this year. So let's look at the plant counts over the years. You can see that they, throughout the first 15 years of the program, they stayed pretty stable, and then they increased significantly over time. To this year, we was 280,000. 288. So those are the plants. Now, some of you might recall this graph. We presented this graph last year, and there were some other numbers on there, and we'll show this. So those are some other plant counts, and so if you'll pay attention to the red descriptor, roots and stems removed. So that's what we did. We removed the stem or the root and the stem. The whole plant is taken out. Now through 08, 09, and 10, we were experimenting with some other systems where just the plant was removed, and that was primarily to try to get something in the South Bay that would show some level of activities down there in progress. So I'm going to actually let Andy describe, the difference here and what the results were in the South Bay. So go ahead, Andy.
Yeah. So in 2008, we started doing a cutting technique. It was just using a machete and a large net system to try and trap the fragments from spreading through the rest of the lake. That was strictly in the South Bay, so it's basically just right out the window here. Shoeleys basically down to the end of Christina Sand. What we found with that practice, it wasn't very effective. It was basically only aesthetic, and it didn't control the plants at all. And as the residents of the South Bay will attest, the problem in the South Bay is basically getting worse every year. And as the scuba diving technique is just not making an impact there anymore. So for this season, we abandoned the South Bay and didn't do any work there. We find that the more time spent in the South Bay right now using scuba techniques is not making an impact, and the rest of the lake is suffering due to that. So that's kind of where we are right now. As you'll see, in 2011 we did no cutting or aesthetic treatment, but we were able to cover a larger section of the shoreline. So we covered about 30% more of the shoreline this year than we were able to in 2010, 2009, due to the fact that we didn't spend any time in the South Bay. So it's a catch-22 down here right now.
Thanks, Andy. So just to put it in really simple terms, diving in the South Bay is a waste of time. We can't keep up with it. It's too thick. The infestation is too thick, and we could have a crew of divers there all year and not do anything else in the lake, and you'd never know the difference. So it's highly unfortunate, but that is the sad and ugly truth about the reality of the South Bay. And I know that it's not something that a lot of people want to hear, but that's what we've got. So for 2012. We will do a bunch of things a little bit differently. One of our issues is transparency and accountability. We want everybody to know exactly what we are, where we're working, what we're doing. And initially, we're going to start off and put a plan together and say, okay, this is our work plan for the year. This is when we expect to be around in these various places in the lake. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to have a GPS tracking unit on the lake or on the boat at all times, and we will be uploading those. Now, I'm working with our information technology guys to figure out whether it's best to upload them and have them on the regional district mapping site, or maybe the simplest thing would be to upload them to Google Earth, because a lot of people are using Google Earth and it's really user-friendly, and just about anybody can upload stuff to Google Earth or look at stuff on Google Earth. So we're just working with our IT guys to figure out the best way to do it. Obviously, it's going to add a little bit of time to Andy's day, but if it works out right, it'll only be about 10 or 15 minutes to dump the GPS track. So anybody then can go on and find out where the boat's been, what the progress has been, where they've been. We've also got a full inventory of all the private properties and cabins and houses. So we will, where we also log everything that we've done there. We're not sure what we're going to do with that yet, other than make it available on our website. So we're also going to be publishing, we're doing weekly progress reports, which we have been doing, but we're going to publish them now online so that people can go in and see what was done. And the accurate plant counts, that I think kind of goes without saying, but we're trying to improve our accuracy on our methods on plant counts just to make sure that we can do it. And then at the end of this, the idea is that we're going to take a look at our plan and take a look at our results and see how we did. And then, now that's with the existing program. So that's the 2012 work plan. But what about the South Bay? And what about this? So, and many of you have seen this excerpt from a 2006 study by a firm that was retained out of the States called Aquatic, and they specialize in this thing. Now, basically, it was the purpose of the report was to determine whether or not our control methods were working, and the answer was generally yes, but, and this big. It's the old cliche, everything before the but is BS. It's working, but it's what they said. They basically said they predicted spot on what we're seeing now. At some point, the divers will not be able to keep up. And through that 2006, 7, 8, 9 period, we saw those plant counts increasing and that infestation getting thicker and thicker in some of the areas. So now the questions are, like, this is not that complicated. There are not that. It's just like if you've got a field full of weeds in your front yard. You don't have a lot of different options. You can pick them by hand. You can cut them with a machine. You can kill them with chemicals. You can put some sort of a physical barrier down, or you can put some, bugs or some other goats or whatever. Aquatic goats, that's what I'm looking for. Anyways,
Scuba gears.
I think actually I'm going to steal one of Lisa Tedesco's lines, and only because I want to say it. Metaphorically speaking, what we're looking at is a bunch of snot on a rock. I just want to say that over and over again. Snot on a rock. Anyway, so it's no laughing matter, but snot on a rock does sound kind of funny. So those are the control options we got. It's not a lot of different options. So in the summer we had a summer workshop, and notwithstanding the fact that there was a few people that were not really happy with us, and I will say that there was definitely a method to our madness. Even though we didn't actually let people stand up and yell at us because we weren't really into it that much. They sort of did anyways, but what I can tell you is that from that workshop, once we got everybody sort of calmed down and thinking about some of the problems that we had, we got such a good quality of feedback, and such more feedback than we would normally get out of any of these meetings that we've had. We had stacks of questionnaires, we had breakout tables, we were writing notes down. All of that stuff was distributed to anybody that gave us an email address at the meeting. We've also posted it to our website, and there's some really good stuff in there. And we had, some fantastic ideas. Some criticism. We had to deal with some criticism that we were actually trying to muzzle people. But considering the scope and the breadth of the ideas that we got, people were really open to giving us ideas. So we got everything from I assume from some of the lakeshore owners that wanted to figure out how they could pay less and everybody else could pay more for the program. That I sort of suggested that might not go over to that well. we got Bob Freeman. We got his. He wants us to package and sell weevil farms so that everybody can raise weevils on site, which was a good idea, and we still think it's a good idea. So let's look at a little bit of this, a little bit of the results of this. So we quantified this, so the red, in this case, the red is yes. So one of the ideas was to add another dive crew, and initially our idea was that we would buy, have another boat, have 2 dive crews working, and some good ideas came out. So well, you don't need that because your dive crews are working 4 days a week, and we have a 3-day-a-week dive crew, using the same equipment. The fact is, yes, we can have that. Some of the other stuff that came out of this part of the discussion, and I'll address it, was that we should get WorkSafe or WCB to reduce the safety requirements, like to relax the requirements. We need commercial diving tickets. Well, in my discussion, none of this stuff was actually just dismissed out of hand. I talked to WorkSafe. WorkSafe considers diving to be one of the riskiest occupations that they administer, and commercial diving, working underwater. I don't know why they think that, but they do. And so the idea that they're going to relax the regulations and let us use recreational divers, I think it was stunned silence on the other end of the line when I suggested that. So it's not going to happen. That said, though, we can talk about adding some divers. Another thing that came out of this part of the discussion was that we should be contracting the dive program out. We would save money by contracting it out. So again, I spent a fair bit of time, and I contacted a whole bunch of commercial dive firms that actually do this for a living, and they contract out to different outfits. Generally speaking, they're working in shipyards, under boats, on big docks, on pipelines, different one. But I actually, and they were all very reluctant to tell me how much it would cost. So I've actually found a program that had been tendered, competitive tender, and it was for milfoil diving. And so I got a hold of the outfit that actually carried out the work, and so their contract with DFO in Cultus Lake, and what they were doing was, even though milfoil doesn't have any negative impact on aquatic habitat, they were cleaning up sockeye spawning areas on Cultus Lake. Again, so their price was $1,800 per day for a crew of 3. So we run a crew of 4, and they had about $390 per day for living out expenses. So just $2,190 per day is what it costs to get a commercial dive crew in. Now, we have a 4-man crew, and that doesn't include a boat. It doesn't include a whole bunch of stuff. So our 4-man crew, we run for about $1,600 a day. So $600 per day less. So I'm not, based on this, I'm not sure that contracting it out would be any cheaper than what we've got. And I would certainly be extremely concerned about the effectiveness of the training. So the crew that we've got, Andy and his crew, are very familiar with the lake, and you see from the numbers that they do a really good job. So adding another crew to the existing equipment would work out to about $90,000, $95,000 a year, and that if we could get the 3-man or the 3-day crew, all in supervision, administration, stuff like that. So that's definitely an option, but it's a $95,000 option, and we have $150,000 tax requisition. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So mechanical control. And mechanical control can be characterized by, there's 3 ways that we know of, and if there's anybody else that knows any more, we'd be happy to hear about it. There is harvesting, which is essentially like cutting a lawn. It takes it off about, 3 meters below the surface or 2 meters below the surface?
Yeah.
And it just basically mows it. and sucks up all the stems. Problem with harvesting, basically, so we talked to the Okanagan Water Basin, we talked to the Columbia Shuswap. Those are the two main areas in the province that use harvesters. And they, even though they run harvester programs, they told us don't bother. It's a waste of time. You're just flushing your money down the toilet. Main reason is that if you get a good growing season, it's just like a lawn. This stuff has to be mowed every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks for it to have any effect. So you got this thing going back and forth constantly. So we were advised against the harvester. The other method that we've heard about is suction dredging, where you basically just suck the whole bottom of the lake up. Anybody from DFO here? Lisa's shaking her head.
There might be some concerns with that.
Yeah. No. I mean, yes, no. So we don't think that's so good. But the one that we heard that has probably the most chance of success from a mechanical perspective is the rototilling. And the rototilling, so there's some great videos on the Okanagan Basin Water Board that shows the rototillers in action. And rototilling is an interesting thing, but really what you've got is a great big floating tractor. And it's basically, if you ever seen a field getting tilled up at the end, it's got like metal angle irons about yay long with a bend in them, and it just basically goes and goes about 6 or 10 inches below the surface and pulls it up by the roots. And again, that's something that we don't know if we'd be allowed to do.
I don't know.
Maybe you'll help us.
The organizations that have done rototilling for years and years have reported to us that in the last couple of seasons, the regulations have gotten much stricter, and what your notifications and whatnot. So, but from a mechanical perspective, it seems to have the most promise. Again, it's not cheap. Each machine is custom made. There's only a few places that make them. Low end, $300,000. High end, $500,000. And basically, what you've got is how deep they can go. So Andy's done a bunch of soundings in the South Bay, and we've determined that one of the less expensive 12 meter.
It's maximum 12 meter, and they could maybe price them as low as $250,000 for that machine, and it would be able to service the whole entire South Bay.
So as we've heard already from Mike, the South Bay is very shallow, so we could get away with a smaller machine. So all in, that would be probably add $50,000 a year or so to the program. Now the thing with rototilling, and we've been cautioned on this already, you've got a regulatory environment that's not that easy to get approval to do it. Plus, it doesn't happen during the recreational season. It happens during the winter months. And the machine goes in rototills. There's no capture of any of the materials. They're just allowed to float to the surface and then drift to the shore. The control mechanism is temperature. It freezes once they hit the air and go to shore. So you can only do it in the winter time. And then you have to stop at a certain time when things start warming up. You've got to have freezing temperatures because that kills the plants. So it's not that. Now that said, we've got 97% of the people that attended our meeting thought 2 minutes.
Well, lunch is ready. Yeah.
So I told you guys that we were going to spend more than 20 minutes. I could have stopped at the letter from the minister. Okay. I just got told to speed up. So biological control is really cool. Next. So basically what biological control is milfoil weevils. Now, that has been a fairly recent process, and we'll talk a little bit about that. A lot of people. So what we've got here is to get the approval to actually drop another species into a water body. Apparently, all sorts of agencies get really excited about that, and so we'll talk a little bit about that later. But a lot of people are in favor of that. and really what they were in favor of. The question we were asking at the time was, do we lobby our senior governments to actually allow us to do this? Aquatic herbicides. Now, this is basically Roundup or 2,4-D or something into the lake, and 13% of the people at the meeting think it's a really good idea.
And they wondered why we brought that to the meeting as an option.
Because we were requested to bring it to the meeting. That's right. So we have presented aquatic herbicides as an option because it is. I think we have some people from Okanagan County. It's used, and people are reading about it and say, why the heck aren't we doing it here? And so we bring it as a discussion point, and then we get crucified because why did you even talk about it? Well, 13% of the people actually think it's a good idea. But so what we got with this is, you can see the challenges. If you remember those graphs, everybody wants everything except for the herbicides. We've got tax requisition limits. Now, we've got this $150,000 a year tax requisition. And any of you have attended the town hall meetings where John McLean talks about how regional district functions work. We got this $150,000 a year. Well, what it doesn't allow for is a lot of research and stuff. Basically, we put all that money on the lake. I don't go to, like the Okanagan County's always having these great meetings, get-togethers. I don't go to them because if I do, I am supposed to budget or supposed to expense this program. And I don't want to take any money off the lake, but that might have to change as we move forward. And of course, we've got these regulatory issues with tilling and biocontrol. So the discussion that we have to have, because right now what we've got is we've budgeted for a status quo program. And Director McGregor has indicated that she wants to have these discussions with the community and then perhaps move some of these ideas into reality, which starts with putting them in the budget, which has not happened. So we'll discount chemicals. Divers is something that we could do. Machines is something we could possibly do. And weevil seems to be the biggest issue. And when we're talking about mechanical, again, I just put the picture up of the South Bay. So the weevil thing is really interesting and really exciting. So Dave Durand actually made a very reasonable request of me. I was trying to explain the regulatory process as I understood it. So Dave asked me to put together a spreadsheet on what my understanding of it was. So Barb Stewart had a great idea today, and I'm going to put this out for the provincial and other agency people. What she thinks the best thing to do would be to get all of the players of the province and the feds in the room, and actually, this process is very much, this is not the milfoil process. It's something I got off the internet. It's amazing how many bad flowcharts there are on the internet if you Google it. But the process seems to be very well designed for a company that wants to, and what's the term that they use? The thing is called a New Substance Notification Regulation. Sounds pretty innocuous. New Substance Notification. Well, it doesn't seem to be that. And there's a bunch of federal agencies involved, depending on what you're doing, and it seems a little bit daunting for a little tiny local government. But we've got the Okanagan Water Basin, we've got the Columbia Shuswap, we've got us, and if we can get everybody in the room with the provincial people to say, this is what has to be done. Because if you think about, like the Okanagan Water Basin, they're running these machines all over the place, and they will admit that it's just an endless cycle. So the potential upside of having this weevil approved is so great for everybody. So if we could do that, I think that's really key to it. What I'd really hate to see, this was my favorite. This is the flow chart for Hey Jude. So if you'll go through it, you have a bunch of decision trees, like don't make it bad, take a sad song and make it better. And you can go through all this and you can go around in circles, but at the end, you just end up going, no, right? So I'd hate to see us getting into that situation. If we can get this together and actually get something moving. But I'm afraid, again, just to reiterate, it's, and you hate to say that you can't do it, but the scope of something like this, and compared to the scope of this Christina Lake milfoil program, it's just kind of overwhelming. We don't have the expertise, we don't have the time or the budget to do something like this. So any help that we could get and any partners we could bring into it, because we think that that's the way to go. So in a perfect world, I would say keep the dive crew, the one dive crew we've got, and work them on the north end of the lake and start putting weevils in the South Bay. We can't do that now. We don't know whether that would happen. So the second perfect would be to maybe get a rototiller. But that raises some issues about, is that just a stopgap, and then what are we going to be doing when and if we get this weevil approved? So there is no easy answers. That's the problem. It's not on a rock a bit. So anyways, that's the end of my discussion.
During lunch, I'm sure. And Alan, thank you so much. We appreciate your humor that you can also throw in.
Hey, and I'll just jump in. Brenda and the Christina Lake Stewardship Group have been just like this idea about even just getting information. They've been in contact with an outfit that has got some approvals in Ontario on the weevil and have just swamped us with papers to read. You've read them all, right, Dave? I hope so, because somebody's got to tell me what they all mean. So I really appreciate that kind of work, because that's the kind of time-intensive work that, quite frankly, our program doesn't really have the budget to do. So that's great help from the Stewardship Society. So.
Okay, and further, thank you to Andy for being here. This is a tough position, and when your young dive people stand up in front of you and say, "Here I am, this is what it's about," you know that it's open and transparent. So we are going to talk further afterward. So Andy, thank you very much.